And Mike had a suggestion that we upload it to Unfiltered, I think, whatever the YouTube channel is. But I didn't want to do that until I asked you guys if you were okay with that. So just let me know. If you're not, let me know. And Nick is here because he expressed some interest and had some experience as well with jobs to be done at other places. So I thought, why not another mind, especially if we might lose Jackie for today. I thought it might be good to have you guys have him join us. So that's why he's here. Thanks, Nick. All right, so if you will remember where we left off last time was the very, very, very important discussion on granularity and altitude of jobs to be done. And since we talked so many moons ago, I have been talking with a couple of designers about this very question. It has come up for them. They're trying to do jobs to be done with their PMs, and they're starting to ask themselves questions about the jobs that they have written. And the questions really boil down to, is this at the right level? Is this too much of a user story level? Is this too high? So I've had a lot of conversations with them around the idea that it kind of depends, because you need to have it at a level that you can use. So if you are wanting to start at that higher level and then write user stories from it, you need to have it at a high enough level to be able to do that. If you want to just kind of get a aspirational view, that's even a higher level. And if you can't write user stories from something, you might need to take it down so you can start writing user stories. So last meeting, we talked about this structure, this overall concept of you've got a job, you've got user stories that are written based on what that job says, and then you have tasks that come from each of the user stories, which are the same thing as issues. The tasks are in our world. So just as a reminder, we all agreed on that structure. So let's talk again about the hierarchy of jobs and the granularity and the altitude and how we want to approach that as a group, because I think that's going to be the most important thing that we get out of this. Who wants to go first? Who had some thoughts while we were away?
Well, at some point, maybe after we discuss a little bit, I could share, because I have a job map for growth. And I think I think it's a good tool for figuring out what granularity you need to be at what time.
Ooh,
so I can share how we think we're going to use that.
Do it. Let's look at it.
Right now?
Yeah. Why not, Jackie?
Okay, I'll just show you real quick.
Go find it. Yeah. If you're like me, you got to go find it. Which tab is it on?
Okay.
Good, then you're not like me.
I've got it up.
Perfect.
So, okay. So this is the growth job map, and I won't walk you through all of it, but I'll just show you kind of how it's structured. So there's a main job, which is really high level. It's find buy the best solution to build and deploy software. And our job performers, actually this is wrong because it's missing the buyer persona, and I keep forgetting to put it in there, but we have a buyer persona, and then we also have people who are doing jobs who also buy GitLab. And we have different situations that are really important. So the situations are things like people who need security and control. They want to run their own instance, and so they're the self-managed people. People who want just to try or really ease of administration, they don't want to mess with installing. Those are the .com people, the SaaS people. We have first-time shoppers. First-time shoppers are kind of like, they're maybe not as familiar with the DevOps solutions that are out there. So they're learning a lot. And then we have other shoppers who they're familiar with DevOps, they're familiar with GitHub, with GitLab, they have a lot of familiarity already. We have a lot of shoppers like that. And so that's another situation. We have needs and desired outcomes, which are pretty common sense things like performance, ease of use, things like that. And then we have kind of like a path that people may take. Of course, the path is different for every person, but at a high level, you're going to discover what solutions are available. You're going to consider different solutions. You're going to do a trial of GitLab. You might learn how to use GitLab or other or actually other, like, GitHub or Bitbucket or something, you're gonna have a decision point where you're gonna be making that decision, and then you iterate on the decision, right? Because once you buy GitLab, you could always cancel it and go somewhere else. So you're iterating on that decision all the time. And underneath the job map, we have these kind of things, these categories, I don't know what to call them, but it's like, try paid features of GitLab to see the value. And under that, you have all these tasks you do, like sign up for a trial of gold, install GitLab if you're doing self-managed. And they're broken down more granularly here. And now what we do is when we're doing like a scorecard, for instance, we might be like, okay, we're going to do the scorecard for by CI minutes, which is down over here because you've already bought GitLab. You just have to add more minutes. And we then write up a job story using the performers, the situations, the needs for that like area that we're working in. And then you end up with sub jobs too, because you may be buying CI minutes as a buyer, or you might be doing it as a developer, or you might be doing it in the situation of the SaaS context or the self-managed context, and all of those make the task a little bit differently. So we have to kind of evaluate it from those different situations. And then that's the granularity that we used for that particular time and moment. So any questions about that? But I think having the whole map there helps you, you can go back and reference it, and then you can get to your more details. Otherwise, if you don't have it, you tend to want to, so I know my throat hurts today, you tend to want to really dig into all of the details all the time. And sometimes you end up getting kind of like lost in the weeds.
Yes. Yeah, I've actually been suggesting to people, to designers, to start mapping out their jobs, because I think for that very reason, Jackie, I think it's going to help them to really have a grasp on what they're trying to do, what they're trying to capture.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, what were you going to say earlier?
I was going to say this is a great example of having this big picture view, which means that the smaller jobs that you're looking to address with the smaller MVCs that you're shipping are all placed in context of the bigger picture, meaning you can be very strategic with where you're investing your efforts. So by having a map like this and having the breakdown in a relatively simple structure like this is just so useful for making the right choices and being able to collaborate as a team, like in your particular area. I think this works exceptionally well for growth. I think this could work well for most teams. I think what may be difficult is with some particular categories, but as like a start, I think this is like a really good way to like sort of get a sense of how it can fit in a little bit more holistically.
I think some categories might be hard to scope this way, but you have to try it and see.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, because this is just the buyer journey part of growth, right? And that's because that's not all growth, right? You're not mapping the whole thing. You're just taking one aspect of it and trying to map it out.
We're not mapping all of GitLab, but over in the like learn how to use GitLab part, that's where the things start to spread out, because you could use any part of GitLab to learn how to use GitLab. We didn't really, of course, I'm not going to put everything in there, but like getting training, documentation, stuff like that is important. Learn about new features that help me is super generic, because those features could be in different parts of GitLab. And then when we're working on that, that's when we would go, that's when we would dig in more to those jobs, and there would be all kinds of things to uncover within it.
Right. So it's almost like the orangey salmon color is kind of like your user story at this view. But then when you dive into it, that user story becomes the job to be done, because you're going to go deeper into what are here listed as tasks, in the blue cards.
Mhm.
Might also
Yeah, and
become a
when
user
we have
story when you get deeper into it. And that's what I've been trying to capture, this whole idea of, this is wonderful, Jackie. Thank you, by the way, to showing this. This is a perfect example of the different levels of granularity when you're looking at it from this altitude. But when you need to zoom into one of those, things kind of change a little bit, like their
things
roles
change.
change.
Well, if you click on a grade there for a scorecard, you would open up the issue for the scorecard, and you would probably, not for all of them yet, because we've just started using this, but
Mhm.
you would have the stories written out more in a more lengthy way as the statements that apply to upgrading your
Mhm.
.com subscription.
Right.
I mean,
And
but really
yeah,
the job to keep in mind is never like, I want to upgrade my subscription, because nobody wakes
right.
up like wanting to do that. It's just they want to keep using the thing. They have to do it. It's like you have to do it if you want to keep using GitLab.
Yeah, so upgrading your subscription turns into a user story, and then you have tasks under that user story to get that upgrade finished. But the reason you're upgrading is because you want to continue to use the right plan for your needs. That now becomes a job for
Mm-hmm.
that effort, right? So it's like you move it up. That's what I meant. Like you like kind of level everything up a little bit, so then you can dive deeper into it. And that's what I think we need to capture in some of the documentation for the jobs to be done. It's not just writing one job to be done, and you're done. It's, you might need to go up or down in how you're viewing things in order to get the thing done that you're trying to get done for your design and your product partners. Yeah. Ian, Valerie, thoughts?
This really lines up with what we did on the package team. So where you have the UX scorecards, we also have, we called them job stories because the terminology wasn't defined yet, but that's kind of the same idea of, you don't wake up in the morning because you want to upgrade your subscription. For package, you don't want to wake up in the morning and be able to deploy specifically through CI. You want
Yeah.
it to be able to be, the higher level idea. I
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah, it really does line up well, which I'm excited to see. I now want to write one of the bigger jobs all the way up at the top, the aspirational of like, I want an easy to use and reliable package solution. And I want to create that now after seeing this.
I was going to add, like, it doesn't have to take a long time to make this thing. It didn't take very long. And it doesn't have to be really perfect and right. Like, we're doing journey research now in growth, and this will probably change.
Sure.
And it's fine. So I think, it's important to not to get hung up, just to throw the cards up there for what you think it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and you can always make it better later.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through of like how we would provide instruction. And I think this is what Lori was getting to, like, how do we even help people determine what altitude or elevation, or I think it was altitude, the terminology we're using. How would we help them determine at what altitude they need to be working within? So I'd be curious, Jackie, what kind of inspired this higher level view for growth? What was the trigger point? Was it having conversations with product management? Kind of what was happening at that moment?
It was because I felt like our scorecard stories, whatever you want to call them, statements, were too granular, and they were too much like tasks, and I found myself often asking the designers like that question of, is this the thing the person wants to do?
Yeah.
What do they want to accomplish? Is this a thing that they have to do in order to accomplish something else? And then I also read the callback book and found it very helpful, like the way it structures the framework.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this and see how it works for growth. And it worked pretty well.
Yeah, when I was talking to Holly the other day, that's kind of the discussion we had too, because she presents a job to be done to me, and I'm like, well, what are you trying to do with it? Are you trying to go into user stories and tasks from this? Can you? Ask yourself, do I know how? Do I know why? If you can't jump to the how right away, it might be too high level. Go down a level write it better at a lower level, and then see if you can get into the user stories and tasks. It's not a, I don't think like it's a set of directions we can write for people to read. I think it's going to probably be some training that we're going to have to send somebody through, but I
think it's
also
training.
apologize
Yeah.
to her. Like I also told Holly, is like, I'm sorry that it's not just prescriptive. It's not write it with this grammar and then you're done. It's what do you need it to do?
So I have a problem that I was working through with Hyana, my designer. One of them was we had a bunch of issues related to environments in our backlog, and we didn't really know what users were trying to do with environments. So we had a bunch of different tasks, and we had to bubble it back up onto like, what's the higher level decision we want people to be doing with GitLab and environments. So our altitude was reverse. We had a big problem of a bunch of tasks that didn't make any sense, and we had to like back it up to see what the umbrella was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of adds another problem to how do we coach people on granularity whenever it's bi-directional. You can have something that's very task oriented, and then you need to understand what's the general flow you want somebody to go through, which is your user story, and then what's the actual purpose you're trying to accomplish at the end. I do think in my past life, I was able to help coach people through that by encouraging them to start with something like a metric to accomplish a goal, you know, like a goal post of here's your quantifiable metric, and then breaking that metric down into, you know, how users are actually going to contribute to that metric.
What do you guys think?
There's also this, I'm not sure, I'm like trying to wrap my head around the idea of starting with a metric, because the metrics are measuring things that we want people to do to show that they're engaged with our product, but they're not necessarily the things that are jobs that people want to accomplish. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're indicators of that.
Oh, I was thinking more globally as a metric. Sorry for that.
Okay. Do you have like an example?
Yeah, I was about to give you one. So in my past, where we use this, it was we want people to use our platform to publish to any social media site. So we were tracking that global metric of here's an action that we want people to perform, and how does this particular task or job contribute back to that metric? And then that would be the action that we would detail in our job to be done. I think GitLab's a little challenging to do that because of how versatile it is and how we don't really have that one big goalpost like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'm struggling with that because the job should be agnostic to your product anyway. And if you're tracking like people who are sharing something on social media on our platform, then it's still defined by the platform rather than like, well, why are people sharing on social media? Because they want to have more friends, or they want to improve the visibility of their business, or, you know, whatever their higher level goal is, which is what I would consider that the job.
Totally agree with you. It was more like, how do we connect the business outcome to the customer action? So that was
go to the higher level customer action. And you might
Right.
say, okay, this is how we're measuring that thing here.
Exactly.
That's the approach that we would typically take as well. We'd say, what's happening 6 to 12 months out? What are the goals that we want to achieve from a business perspective, and how is that coupled with the user outcomes that we're trying to achieve as well? And that sort of tie gives you a good hypothesis of what could the jobs be that we want, and that outlines a map very similar to what Jackie put there. That is full of hypothesis of what jobs to be done are, and the subtasks and users and stuff. And that's what we'd call like an opportunity map. And we'd use that map to say, oh, which areas do we need to validate the particular job to be done? Which ones are we uncertain about? Where do we think we can invest our efforts now and sort of do stuff around the product? And then you start to get a better level of fidelity on what's actually happening with those jobs to be done. So the way that you can start to rationalize the high level abstract with the lower level granular detail is by shooting out like 6 months in the future, thinking what are the business outcomes and the user outcomes that we're trying to achieve, and then use that to sort of bounce back and forth in order to iterate on the map that you're creating. You could do that at a category level. That may be an artificial constraint. Our categories are pretty functional, so sometimes they're not. But that's like from a repeated process of doing that, consulting with customers for a while, that seemed to work quite well and was easy for people to take on board.
I also like that you said category was constraining. I do think it's an artificial constraint. And I do see a lot of product managers shying away from solving high impact jobs to be done because it's a cross stage initiative. And it's something that's really challenging for us to embrace at GitLab because we have 40 product managers, and the job to be done, the task the user wants to complete will lead into all these other areas.
I was thinking it would be cool to have a GitLab level job map, like just at the GitLab level. Like, let's not think about our categories, just make the GitLab job map, and then you can drill down from there.
That may be quite difficult to start out with by creating the taxonomy just like from the start. So maybe it's something we could get to eventually once we have a collection of well-validated jobs. I would say starting out with different pockets based on categories may be an interesting way to do it. And then once you have a solid mass of jobs, then you can start reflecting and thinking, is there a different sort of taxonomy and structure that comes out of this?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's sort of the way I typically envision it. Again, it's this back and forth hypothesis. We don't know the problem space fully, but we can start to explore the problem space and the solution space at the same time by making hypothesis, testing it out, doing research spikes, and so on.
I think we're in agreement.
We
like this.
Yeah.
We want to move forward with it. I think the big question is how?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And
Like,
I
so
think that's,
let's summarize.
Is that your next step, Lori?
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, because it is like I can write instructions on that jobs to be done page to say, like, do a job map. Here's an example. This is what you need to have in it. What I have experienced with working with the UX team as a whole, I'm not going to call out any individuals, but as a whole, they tend to lean towards the prescriptive. Give me a template, I will fill it out. Give me some steps, I will follow them. If I have problems, I will come ask you, but I just want some steps to follow. This leans towards a little bit of alchemy. It's not quite a B, C, D, E, you get your answers kind of process. There is a framework, but it can be interpretive inside that framework. So I as an instructional designer, because I have that as part of my background, I'm struggling with trying to figure out how to explain and coach at the same time this process. And I'm aware that it may not just be words, like we may need to take this to that Udemy training platform and have people go through and listen, have them read Jim's book. But what do you guys see as the immediate needs and how can we help? Yeah.
Maybe one opportunity here with frameworks and with teaching people frameworks, sometimes exit criteria are more important to satisfy than like following a particular process. So if we think about what is the end state of a job map, and then giving people that end state as the target or the goalpost, then they'll start to flow through the job map or process organically in order to accomplish that goalpost. So for example, if it is, I as a UX designer want to accomplish a hierarchical view of how a job to be done is inherited by user stories and is accomplished or rendered by tasks for a specific user. this would be a natural way for them to decompose that job to be done into user stories, into tasks. What do you think?
Yeah.
I would say an MVC may not to be go and document something asynchronously to start out with.
Yeah.
What I've found with some of the more complex and abstract like ideas and ways of approaching design in general within a context where you're not sat down next to other designers in a studio, and it's harder to get the sort of tacit stuff going, is go with like Jeffrey Moore's crossing the chasm model, if you're familiar with like that diffusion of innovation curve. And basically the summary of the book is, if you're going to try and drive adoption of a particular innovation in general, you just need to focus your efforts not on the mass market, but you need to focus your efforts on the early adopters, the people who are actually showing interest in using this and testing the ideas out with that user group, and then using the insights that you have from testing the users to generate whatever material comes afterwards. I think the MVC in this state is not thorough documentation. I think it's experimentation with like a little bit more hands-on with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would almost counter that, just knowing, so I would agree in any place other than GitLab. But I think GitLab is unique, and it has its pros and cons. We can just be honest about that, right? So to me, I actually see what Jackie has proposed as a template in Mural or in Figma or wherever we want to put this, where it has these boxes where you populate them. And I do agree with the previous discussion of people are going to look at this in different ways and they're going to fill it in differently. And I think that part's okay. But we need to give them a structure where they can kind of like grab cards and fill them in and group them together. And I think that this layout that Jackie Bauer has proposed is really helpful. And people are going to look at it from top up and bottom down, right? So we talked a little bit about that too. Some people are going to start with the growth job, higher level cross stage. Other people are going to say, well, these are the tasks that I think that users are going to do, and they're going to fill it in different ways. But the structure that we provide them is the template, and then the rest of it can be somewhat organic. So just kind of like give them the freedom, but give them the boxes to be free within.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
maybe you can do a little bit of both as well. I mean,
And that's what I was just going to say is, like, I think that slide that I had that I showed you guys last time with the how and the why questions, that seems to have resonated, because I just pull it up and I'm showing everybody who comes to me with questions like, what do you think about this? And it seems to have resonated a lot with them, because they can understand, oh, am I at the right level to do my work? How do I get to the right level? Ask why or ask how. So maybe that paired with a starter template here with a little bit of why would you use either one of these to get them started. Because I hear what you're saying, Nick. The problem that we have is that the cart is already going, and we don't know if we have the right horse that's pulling the cart. Like, we've already got to do these category maturity scorecards. We have said you're going to use jobs to be done to help you pick out the tasks that you're going to be doing with them. So that's been the impetus for all of this jobs to be done work that I've been a part of with other people. So it's kind of hard to just have a separate group that is very passionate about it and to hammer out the process. So I think we're going to have to do the best we can and then come back and iterate if we need to, depending on how they consume what we give them. I hate that. I hate that as a Virgo. I hate that. So, like, I just wanted to be able to give you guys some steps and some foolproof methods so you can feel confident in what you're doing. But yeah, sorry, Becky, go ahead.
how about we run a little test where we put like a poll out on Slack and say, who wants to be part of this new jobs to be done working group or whatever it is, just to gauge interest of who's actually like, oh, I want to start doing something with jobs to be done. And those are the people who will help to provide feedback and shape the template sort of structures that we want to generate for the masses. I think that just doing like a quick poll of who's using jobs to be done, who's interested in improving that, who wants to be part of something, is a good way of like gauging the best people to work with.
I don't know if we're at that point. I think the train has left the station in regards, and everybody's on it, whether they wanted to be on it or not.
Yeah, we're all using
they're on it. Yeah, everybody is using a job to be done in some form. It may not be perfect. That's okay, because we're attempting to use it. So I think that as a company, we're sold on the idea of using it. We have enough adoption. It's just now it's kind of course correcting on this is how we actually use it here at GitLab. And yes, it's slightly different than how, certain books outline it. It's going to be a slightly different take on it. And I think that's what we're really trying to achieve here is what is the GitLab way of jobs to be done, and how do we convey that and get people to use it in practice in a consistent way. And my concern about like having a little bit too much of a free-for-all is we're going to come up with 100 different takes of how to use it, and people are going to take a book that they read and then try to apply it, and it's not going to fit the model. And so really this is just us trying to guide have less chaos on the train.
It's interesting you say that, Valerie. I like that you have this intent to want to build like a really good GitLab version for jobs to be done. I think that you're absolutely right. We are kind of in this place where we're telling people to use jobs to be done, and people are using them. I would question our tolerance for people deviating from the model, and how do we feel about that deviation, and if that's something that we want to support. Like, is adherence to a model what we really want, or is it that we give people the objective of a job to be done and then take note of how they're using them so that we can feed back into this job to be done use case and model? I'm really hesitant from a product manager standpoint of having a prescriptive job to be done model, because I think that the way your interview style, the way you learn, how you process information, how your team works together could all influence the way that you approach jobs to be done and the way you decide to decompose them. And having something too prescriptive or something too, this is what you must follow, could really inhibit the innovation and the creativity that we want to inject back into a jobs to be done framework. So I'm a little anxious to hear that we want to have this gold standard, and I could see the utility in having it, but I could also see the consequences of having it, that people feel boxed in.
Yeah, and I think what I'm seeing is people who don't have confidence in the jobs to be done concept, process, whatever you want to say, are completely lost. And the things that I've been reading that they've been doing, I'm like, that's a task. That's not even a job to be done. But they don't know that. And so it's striking the balance between trying to educate them enough to use a framework that can be elastic with confidence, because they are not like you guys. This is why y'all are here. There are people who have no clue what they're doing, and they have not read a book. They haven't picked up a book. They haven't done anything. They just thought, oh, it's this grammar. I'll just write anything with this grammar and it'll be fine. Then they try to do stuff with it. That's when they come to me, and that's when I have to have a conversation with them around, this is not a job to be done. This is something entirely different. Let's talk about what that really is. So we're trying to educate on that level, but to your point, Jackie, too, I don't want to constrain innovation. I don't want to constrain out of the box thinking, but I need to get them to the point where they're ready to break the rules. They have to know what the rules are first. And some people just don't know what they are yet. So we have to strike that good balance between giving them some scaffolding to educate them on what it is and feel comfortable with it, so then they can get to the point where they can have those interviews how they want to and gather the information in the best way possible. But I still have people who are fighting me about not interviewing the job doers. They don't want to interview them. Like, but you don't even know if your jobs are correct. We'll just send a survey. That's not how this works. You don't send a survey to validate your jobs. You have to do interviews with people or look at the research that has already been done and pull those jobs from that. So it's fighting that whole all
Yeah,
of that
they
those
need
bad
like a
assumptions.
decision tree,
Yeah, right.
right? So because there's a confidence thing, confidence
Yeah.
in like what do we know and how confident are we in what we think that we know.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can justify some use cases where we would not go and validate jobs to be done because we have market research, we have research that we've already done, we've already spoken to our target audience. We're 90% good on these jobs. We might have one or two that are still questionable, and I think we don't have to address them immediately, but in time we will. And I also think that there's other ways of verifying jobs. It could be more organic. It doesn't have to be this formulated process of, okay, I'm working on a job to be done, therefore I must go through these 100 steps in order to
Right.
validate it. I think that's where I'm at right now is I agree, Jackie. I don't want to, I mean, the whole concept of jobs is to allow for innovation. And so for us to come up with a really prescriptive step, and that's what I mean by GitLab needs its own version of jobs, because
Sure.
we don't want to be super prescriptive about it. We don't want to have, 1,000-page book where they have to read through in order to understand how we apply it here. I actually think that it's like a 2-pager. The GitLab way of doing things is a 2-page version of jobs to be done. And we just have to get to that point. Like, how do we distill it? How do we make it to where there's just enough, to Lori's point, enough structure where they know how to just get going. And then we're going to get feedback from people who do it. And I think this is part of Nick's point too, of like, we just need to get people to try it out and then offer feedback. I mean, this fits our cultural model. Start small, try it out, provide feedback, iterate. Like, that's exactly what we want to do here.
Yeah,
So
and
that's my concern, is like, I don't want to roll out this big, hey, we're going to do this big job to be done thing. And then it becomes immediately overwhelming. People lose interest in it. We hear from PMs, like, you're adding an additional step to our workflow, right? We need to figure out, where does this already fit into our process, and how do we just use it?
Yeah, that made me laugh, because the whole category maturity scorecard process, oh my God, that was such a hard thing for me to like go through and adopt, because I'm like, oh man, I've already interviewed 50 people.
I know.
so as a product manager who is very much like experiential with customers, like, I like to watch them do things. I like to interview people and have hypotheses that get validated really quickly or not. I'm in complete agreement with you. I would say, if we find like our pilot group, what's our timeline to roll out whatever framework we're looking at? Like, what's our goal here?
I would already argue we've already got our pilot group. They're doing it now.
Okay.
Like, I can't tell you a day does not go by that somebody doesn't ping me on Slack to say, hey, can you talk about jobs to be done? I need help.
All right.
They're already doing it. So what I'm trying to do is chase them with my 2-pager, going, wait, do it this way. Maybe this will help you. So I can tell you again, it's the altitude and granularity. They don't understand how to apply that. The job map, I think, will very much help them, because they're getting lost very quickly in an overwhelming list of 40 jobs to be done. Where do I start? What do I do? What does this look like? How does this even apply to my category? And even just the grammar that we talked about last time, that's not set either. Like, that does actually need to be set. We need to decide how we're going to state these jobs to be done. So there are things that I think we can put into a 2-page, whatever, handbook situation now that will help guide people, and additional scaffolding training, whatever you want to call it, that will also help them as they go through this, and stop coming to me for all of the questions. I mean, like, I don't mind them that they come to me, but it tells me that they still need help, and they're doing it now. So I would argue we have our experiment is going. It has been going for a couple weeks now, and this is why you guys are here again. Like, I asked Christy, is like, I need help. We need to come together as a group across GitLab and figure out what we can agree on, and then ship that and say, this is what we've agreed on, that this is our flavor of jobs to be done here at GitLab. Please use some of these guidelines. And then we need to figure out how else we can support people as they're doing it, because they're already doing it.
Okay, love it. So for the next 20 minutes, what do we want to accomplish?
Just before we do that, just a quick observation. I think therefore there are two personas or categories of people using jobs to be done then in GitLab broadly. There are the learners, people who want to learn jobs to be done, and then there are people who want to activate jobs to be done or basically excel with them. So the tracks of training and the ways that you approach those people will be different. So if we want to invest our time, it seems we want to invest our time in basically helping the learners to get started, and then later on it's worthwhile investing time in helping to activate afterwards.
I think we actually have to do both at the same time, unfortunately, because people are already using it.
Yeah.
Right.
Or we can use the content, like we can have the same content, position it differently, you know, when we're talking to these two audiences.
Yeah, I think one's more hands-on, where design managers in particular will need to be far more invested in, you know, making sure like the foundational elements are understood. And some designers won't need as much attention in that, right? Some people, I'll pick on Ian. Ian's not going to need his manager to sit with him and go through this, and that makes our lives easier. So he's been part of this discussion. He'll help us formulate how we're going to move forward, and he can also help spread the word. So I think that we will have to address both, but we'll just have to approach it slightly different. Same 2-pager though.
It would be cool to have a training video, I think. I feel like some of this might be easier like to understand by video with some examples. And then people can watch the video, and then they can work with their manager and with their peer mentors to like really build up the knowledge and practice, right, as they do it.
Yeah, like just having a quick video of what you did, Jackie, of that board that you put together, that's extremely helpful. Because I think if we just showed them a template and then a completed one, they'll still have a ton of questions.
Oh yeah. Yes, and I hate writing.
I would call out.
So many things. Yeah.
One of the cool things I would call out was seeing the board that Jackie put together and then seeing the scorecard grade. It just immediately clicked that like that's the scale of that item. And then the group of all of the UX scorecards is the next level up. So one piece of advice I might offer from what I've heard from everyone else talking about jobs to be done is the deliverable attached to them. So you don't want something so granular that a UX scorecard is way overboard. That means you went too far down. And that's resonated with some of the designers I've talked to, where it's just like, would you do a UX scorecard to be able to click a button? Like, you could, but that's not really valuable. And that has resonated when other people have been talking about it. So in that 2-pager, being able to say, here's, you know, the map in total, and that this one piece is going to be a UX scorecard, and then these 5 things end up being a maturity scorecard, or however it breaks out, might help them understand if they know what the outcome is. If it's too abstract all the time, it is really hard to nail it down, because every group, every category, every stage is going to be a little different just inherently. And so it's hard to grasp those kinds of groupings.
Yeah, I agree. And I had a thought and I just left. Oh, geez. It's Friday.
I really like that you called that out, Ian, because it's so important for people to understand that they're not doing these one-off things, that everything is connected to, like, we're not asking them to do this job map and it not be applicable to everything that they're actually doing within their work. So I think that's just really important to highlight, that we're not adding something to your plate. We're providing an alternative way to view it and get a perspective into, you're going to work on this, but, you know, 10 days later, you're going to pull that information back and you're going to apply it. And I think that's so incredibly helpful.
And I assume, Jackie, that you guys did that with your PM too, right? It wasn't just a design activity.
I just did it, and then I shared it in our design team, like at the team level, and then we worked on it together to modify it. And it's a really good question. I've shared it with the PMs. The PMs are like, fine. But that's because I think we already have a really strong alignment. And so I think probably that's not going to work for every team.
Sure.
So we can think through like how we suggest people go about doing this. I don't think everyone should just do it the way that we did in growth. So
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of groups who could benefit from doing it synchronously with their PM if possible, and work through it that way. I like my vision would be to have your design manager, your designer, your researcher, and your PM all there together, working on at least starting working on that together in a room, and then maybe finishing it asynchronously, but having those discussions, because I know for some of the PMs, I know it's going to be hard for them to have these conversations because they just don't think like this. And some of them it's going to be super easy. Like Jackie, I would feel like, yeah, she just comes up with this in her dreams and it'll be fine because Jackie's so good at it. But yeah, I think it's definitely a collaborative effort.
So what's the point in time in our standard process where we would be encouraging people to do this? So we have things like the opportunity canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's it's at least historically so far, the 3 months that we've been doing them, they've been very feature specific. So we have this idea that our customer base wants this feature, and then we fill in an opportunity canvas based off of that feature. To me, it seems like this could either come before an opportunity canvas or during an opportunity canvas.
So
But
all of mine come.
Valerie?
I'm sorry, I heard two people at once, so I didn't hear anything.
Go ahead, Jackie.
So my job to be done always come up during the opportunity canvas. And I end up tracking them as a part of like the granular, what is the current state of release management? And I end up appending more jobs to be done and user stories after we investigate. And sometimes like I do probably 6 to 10 opportunity canvases a quarter, and only 2 of them end up going forward as like things that get solution validation. The other ones end up getting like debunked or removed, or they're no longer valid assumptions, or that feature is actually not needed. So I think that's also probably aberrant, and that's not necessarily the behavior I think all product managers are doing though.
Tim and I, at least, and I don't want to speak for him, but from what we've done, we've had a similar experience where the opportunity canvas is usually tied to a job. And if we go through the opportunity canvas process and discover a job is missing entirely, like there was a goal we didn't see before, that means there's a new job to be done we need to add, or the converse where we assumed there was a need and we started working towards a solution, and then we found out that wasn't actually a problem our users cared about, in which case that reflected in the opportunity canvas. So I feel like they're definitely partnered for sure.
Jackie, did you want to say something?
Well, I had a question, but I think I was just wondering, so I'll just say this. So to me, it's like the job map is just a thing you do at any time. You're like, oh, we don't have it, we need one, so let's make it. And then after that, you have it and you refine it and you look at it at different times. Like when you're doing an opportunity canvas, you would look at it either to identify, okay, where are we focusing, or also, where do we have opportunity, where do we want to like fill in gaps. And then when you're doing a scorecard, you look at it and you use it. So it's just a thing you do, and you can do it at any time, because you don't have it. And then once you've done it once, then it's just like, you're using it. It's a living thing. And
I firmly agree with that. I just shared in the chat what I'm using for my story map today, and it's not a pretty visual like you have, Jackie, because I'm a spreadsheet person. I need to like search and index, and I'm like, boxes with colors are hard for my red-green color blindness. So I have this tab, job to be done, RM release manager, and I cross them off once we deliver that job to be done. And then I have this other tab called user stories environments. And this is like a specific user story, like decomposition of a user story into several jobs to be done. And if you scroll like all the way over, I have like a huge linking of issues and epics and tasks to those. So that's how I've done it. It lives and I add to it constantly.
Yeah, so it looks like the first tab is like the highest level, and then so if I go to user stories environments, is that a breakdown of something on the first tab?
It's actually a breakdown of something on the second tab that I just moved. It looks like, so journeys to release, job to be done, release manager, user story environments, which links back to a release orchestration job to be done 6, which is from the job to be done release manager.
Yeah.
So I have like a slug in column F that then gets its own tab for a decomposition. Because this can get really big, you know, like
it can get really huge.
Thousands of user stories for a product.
You can even have the visual job map at the higher level, and you can have this thing which you really work from, which is like the very deeper, breaking things down. It's like a cascade down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like, and if you didn't want to do a spreadsheet, you could just have another mural board that you link to your higher level job to be done. And again, we've come back around full circle in an hour to the talking about the altitude and the granularity of the jobs to be done, which I love. I love that symmetry. But yeah, I think these are great tools to help people understand visually and Excel-y how you can move up and down with it all the time to get the thing that you need to get done. And Nick,
for
I think
a product manager, you might have a hard time getting them to adopt mural.
Yeah,
I feel like that might be a good design tool, but I don't know many product managers here that use it actively. So that might be something that we'll have to challenge.
Jackie, do you know how they're managing their jobs to be done? Like, are they doing like an Excel like you got, or they've got another tool?
We have a handbook page. So Tim created a handbook page, and now most people have published that handbook page. So creating a table is typically how people are managing it. And I would say the other way that people are managing it are in issues. So it's just like this sprawl of epics and issues that people are creating. And that's from a product. Like when I'm coaching people on how to use a job to be done, I'm like, oh, this is really hard for you because you're used to only working in handbook epics and issues. And our hierarchy of that doesn't map very cleanly, right?
Yeah.
Growth is different. I was just gonna quickly answer your question, Lori. So growth is different because we do experiments. So the way it sort of works is the PMs are focused on very specific KPIs. They're running small and big experiments to impact those KPIs. And then the designers are constantly reminding the PMs about the job in order to help them design, like once they get to the design of those experiments, to make design decisions. So the PMs in growth, they don't necessarily use jobs to be done because they are very much KPI focused.
Gotcha.
I love that you said that, Jackie, because I used to work in an organization where I had growth PMs reporting in through me and traditional PMs reporting through me. So that's where I've had to create this artifact of attributing things to a global KPI so that we were able to use the same process across both groups.
Yeah, the way they think is different.
So different.
Interesting. That's cool. Cool. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. How do we feel? That good, huh?
Yeah, honestly, I'm feeling a little nervous because, we have seen really great things today, and we've had a really good discussion. But I'm coming from a really practical standpoint of like, I've seen things not be successful when we don't specifically say this is the moment of time that you do this. And I think that over time that can change. But just to get the adoption going, we have to unfortunately explicitly say, this is when you do this. And then over time, I'm sorry?
Valerie, oh my God, my brain. I just woke up. Can you elaborate on that? Because like the job, we just tell people like, you got to make a job map once. And are you thinking like we need to also explicitly tell people like, when do you pull it out and use it? versus when do you ignore it? Is that what you're getting at?
Probably not the latter. I think it's the, like, how do we even get adoption of this? So I'll pick on product management for a second. Sorry, Jackie. Yeah, cover yours. Actually, you're the exception to the rule, so
Yeah.
it's not really about you. So in the area that I work, it is, or some of our categories, some of our stage groups, I've never seen an opportunity canvas. So we're at a level where it's really consistent across the board. And so we explicitly need to say, this is the moment that you do this. So if it's during the opportunity canvas, this is why I keep bringing opportunity canvas up. Like, if product management is responsible for doing an opportunity canvas, then let's build the job aspects of that in. And I think that there is a little box that says, what's the customer problem? And that's the box that I'm kind of narrowing in on here about, is that our opportunity within this canvas to help push this model forward?
So I think where you might run into a problem, Valerie, is that not all PMs have to do opportunity canvases. So like, for example, the create stage, they have such a backlog of stuff to do that they're able to completely avoid going through the opportunity canvas. And instead they start out solution validation. So I really think solution validation in the product development lifecycle is the area where we should be pulling out a job to be done. And as a product manager, I don't know how I would do my job without jobs to be done. So I think I was coached wrong or something, like in my career, because I feel like jobs to be done are something I really do dream about and I do think about, and I put everything into context of a task and the KPI and North Star metric. Like, how do I drive revenue from what this customer is trying to do in our platform? Like, that is the way my brain thinks with everything that I have to do with release management. So I would say opportunity canvases are probably not the best way to do it, because not everyone has it adopted. But I do think if we can tie it to the product development life cycle, GitLab, like solution validation is where you select your job to be done. And that's where you iterate and decompose it into specific issues. I think that that's like a way that we can update the handbook and say this is where product managers need to interface with design.
I'm okay with starting with that. I think that's a first iteration. To me, it's still so late in the process. I would much rather have, like, how do we get to the altitude that Jackie was talking about if we're already at solution validation? And this is where designers really struggle, because if we're at solution validation, then that means we're in the product. We're thinking about how things are going into the product. We're not really thinking about the job. We're thinking about the tasks. And that's why we're getting these jobs that are written at either a user story or task level. And so, but I'm okay with starting there as long as we can also coach and train on the altitude, because it's so different. And I think that the biggest gap that we have isn't necessarily during the solution validation phase. It's actually the, how do I see across? How
so
do
maybe
I
it's problem
be more realistic?
validation. Maybe we just move it up in the life cycle.
Yeah,
I
maybe
think
that's
attaching it to our life cycle would be the best way to do it, because then people already have a time frame that they're thinking about doing
exactly.
something.
Yep.
The problem validation makes perfect sense to me.
So what we do there then is get designers more involved in problem validation.
Oh yeah, I see it as two things. We need to back it up, back everything up, because we are so granular all the time with our solutions, and even the problem validation can be very granular with what is getting brought to my desk, at least. We need to back it up and take a bigger view, like Jackie's team has done with growth. Like, let's back up and look longitudinally what's happening here. That is where we can encourage them to create these job maps. Specifically using them, I think you get into this problem validation. Oh, I think there's a problem with this step and this function. I'm not sure what it is. Let's go find out. Well, let's go back to the job map. Where does that lie? What is involved in that problem area? What could we possibly go and dive deeper into? And so you go back to that job map and use it at different areas. Solution validation. Where is that line on this job map? What else is around it? What else am I not thinking about cross-stage wise, like, that I need to take into consideration as well with this solution, as well as that problem validation too. I think it can serve as like the, dare I say, a roadmap, but like a place to get your bearings and your context for what your task, your perceived task is at hand that we don't have right now. And I think that's why we're so granular in so many things that we're doing.
Agreed. And that's why I feel like it's not necessarily immediately coupled to the product development workflow. It's more coupled to the events in time when you're planning for the vision of where you want to be in the next 3 or 6 months or whatever, and then you basically stake your North Star, create a hypothesis or a map of the territory of what jobs there are, and then use that to sort of feel your way through whatever is happening. I think retroactively force fitting jobs to be done probably is just going to get more of the same result, but that's an opinion of mine.
Yeah, so that plays into that flexibility model of like we're providing them a framework and then they'll have to determine when, because I can tell you in the area that I work, we can't even get 2 milestones ahead, so 2 months.
I know.
And so we need to start really small. But if there are pockets of the company that are thinking, 3 milestones and beyond, then yes, by all means, use the framework to that, and then be the exemplar that everyone else can follow. But until then, I think we have to stay small. We have to stay practical. We have to look for what opportunities already exist and kind of just squeeze it into there and then try it out and then iterate.
Yeah,
we can't roll out a big thing that will not be successful.
No, and nor should we, because I don't want to waste anybody's time. So, and that's why we're here. So thank you so much for everybody for joining today. I really appreciate it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about all this and go into my MR and update some stuff. And then I'm going to ping all of you on that MR. And so you can go back and look at things. And if I do things wrong in the MR, just let me know. I too am learning about merge requests on all different fronts for another project. But I would love to get your thoughts on that, because that's where all of this has started, at least for the UX organization. But there is stuff that we need to spill over into the product management organization as well. So keep that in mind as well. But thank you so much for this. This has been wonderful. I'm so glad and so happy where we've landed after 2 sessions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lori.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Bye.
Awesome.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.